evolved into almost a zero-sum game. You know, it's either this or it's that. It's either black or it's white. And we know that's not true, right? I mean,
Bernie proved it.
Yeah, well, yeah, he did. And you know, there's always that real in the middle.
I think that more important than how we got here is where we're going.
Right.
And here's some things that you want to watch out for, because we can't give you that answer. We're not going to prognosticate. But what we can say is that political science, sociopolitical communication, and communication all are social sciences that look in hindsight. Okay, we'll be able to explain this to you after it happened. What I can tell you is right now is that there are a couple of messages in the public discourse that I think are important to pay attention to. Number one is coming out of Brand New Congress. Brand New Congress is run by Zach Exley, who is the former social media director for Bernie Sanders, who worked for Wikipedia for years over in China. His group is looking for Republicans, Tea Partiers, Democrats, whoever, who agree on the same thing. I don't know if you've heard about this new support for, is it in Oklahoma, a mayor who supports the pro-life position, but is running as a Democrat, and the Democratic Party decided to support that person, and there's all this uproar. It's like, for crying out loud, let the person have one bit of individuality. That doesn't make them bad. And so they're trying to get slates of people who agree on issues rather than party agreement. So that's one group of messaging that's coming out. Another one is, let's be as divided as possible. Let's have every social movement turn into a political campaign and see where we can go from there. That could be very bad if you think about that as polarization, but I think it also could be very good if you think about it as citizen activity, as citizens getting involved, as you guys wanting to run for local offices. I have heard more about local offices, and you guys just had a really messed up municipal election, by the way. But I don't think that that's necessarily polarization, that's action, which is good. On the national scale, when you look at Congress, we have gotten further and further apart, deeper blue, deeper red, whatever that means. I mean, it used to be that we would be half and half and sometimes agree, and there were these independents. But then Bernie Sanders said, you know what, you can't win as an independent third party-er. Look at Ross Perot, who you guys don't remember. But you can't win as an independent, so I'm going to go Democrat. And that really screwed things up because he wasn't a Democrat. So I think what I'm trying to say is more voices are going to be heard, and that's going to look like more vision. But ultimately what it will mean is that citizens are becoming more involved. I think.
I think it's going to get worse.
There's a shocker, Mr. Downer. Every class he came to, I think it's just terrible.
I think it's going to get worse, and I'll tell you why. I think demographics are our future. I also think they are going to much hate each other. I forget the statistics. You guys probably know them off the top of your head. Here, by 2030 or 2040, white Americans will no longer be a majority in America, and they will be overtaken a couple decades after that. If you can fast forward your brains that much, I would predict we will see a population that is majority non-white, and yet political power and as important, economic and business power will largely be held by the white populations. We exist in a society right now where white people have a larger share of the pie than their percentage, and non-whites have a smaller share. There have been lots of moves over the past couple decades to bring those pie slices to be more representative. In doing that, we have inflamed, understandably so, white population is seeing their, albeit outsized, pie slice going down. That's clearly, we saw this past election, that's clearly inciting a lot of frustration and anger from the white community. If you think that non-whites are going to completely smile and be civil while whites are really, really upset, non-whites will answer in kind. And so I think the division will only get worse, and I think it's going to take on a racial tone as well in your lifetime.
But you know who solves that problem?
Who solves it?
Them.
Oh my
Come on, Andrew.
God. Who else has a question?
People keep telling you, you guys can't do anything, you're not going to do anything.
Who else has a question? Anybody? Oh, we got a great. Go ahead. Yeah, Whitney.
I was actually kind of interested to hear a little bit more on what you were talking about, like with the media and him saying the fake news. Like, how much influence do you think he really has over the media? Because that does seem like it would be like very detrimental to us.
Andrew would like you to answer this question.
The influence that the president has over the media?
Trump.
Yeah, that AP transcript, there's a riff on, he's not going to watch, he doesn't watch news, that doesn't give him good coverage. He doesn't watch CNN, even though he just mentioned it 2 minutes earlier. He doesn't watch MSNBC. So he says these things. There's a lot of evidence that that's not true, and I think that's really weird. I agree with Liz completely that the undermining of the press is a really dangerous thing. That if you say you can't trust those people, it's all fake. Now, I criticize the media broadly and often, and I have for years. I have a big problem with eyeballs for rent, with commercial, short-form, so-called journalism. I have a real problem with people thinking the Today Show is a news program. So this is not a one-person deal, and we have some challenges in terms of information literacy in this country that did not come along on June 16, 2015, the day the candidacy was announced, by the way. So there were some issues structurally that were already here. I think it's a conceit and part of narcissism to think that, oh, if I use Twitter, I can communicate directly with people. That is not even true. That is what you hear him say. I don't think that that's a responsible thing to say in a democracy, frankly. But there's this parasitic and symbiotic relationship that he has with the media. If you listen to interviews with Zucker from CNN, the cash has been rolling into cable news networks. So what I would say is look at international media, and if you want to know how we're doing on foreign policy, read Der Spiegel, read Le Monde, read
The Irish Times.
Al Jazeera English, read the Irish Times.
The Irish Times.
See what the rest of the world says, because we need to look at all the media instead of doing what he does, which is apparently just look at the real surfacey stuff, those shouting matches on CNN or MSNBC. That's all about clicks, that's all about eyeballs.
Well, and the other thing that I'll say is that when I was in college, I was studying communications with an S at John Carroll University. I was in production, media production, journalism. Obviously, I took the right course. Look, we were taught the problem with bias in the media, okay? And let's just be clear about this. It's true. Some structural problems have always existed because there's always been bias in the media. That is not a question. And if you didn't watch media knowing what the bias was, then you were probably getting really bad news. But if you were watching it knowing what the bias was and following it up with your own critical thinking skills, you were in better shape. What we have done, instead of giving you guys more tools and helping you, we've been like upping our critical thinking skills, at least at MSU, and a lot of the large Midwestern colleges have gotten into this idea that we have to force upon you critical thinking skills instead of telling you how to think, but telling you, or teaching you how to think instead of what to think. What happened, not on June 15th, but prior to that, was that Donald Trump started playing a game with us. And it's the biggest loser, I think, but it's what was his You're Fired show? I didn't watch it. The Apprentice. It's The Apprentice. And he's like, let's see which news source I want to downgrade today and fire. Now, what happens is that makes you question every single news source that you get. You would think that would be a good thing, except then what you do is just say, I can't figure this out, and shut it down. And so now you're no longer critically thinking about biased news. You're thinking, oh, that's fake news. I'll tell you what fake news is. It's a student who created an email chain between he and his professor that never existed and put it up on Twitter, got 60,000 shares, and then went around the state proclaiming that his research was being propagated by the university. That's fake news when you create a story. What is not fake news is reporting that the president is spending way too much time on a golf course in the opinion of some Politico. That's just biased news. So I think that we really need to understand the difference between biased news, which is why I would watch fake news, which is why I would watch Fox News all the time. Oh my God, I can't believe I just did that. I'm so sorry. But I would watch Fox News. I would watch Fox News all the time. I'm going to stop watching that now.
I tell you to drop the mic, Dr. Dudash, you're not using one.
Done.
So we're down to our last question. I want to thank all our questioners. Since I've got you guys gathered, I want a percentage. What are the odds, in each of yours opinion, that the filibuster as it currently exists will exist in 2020? Start with Bill.
What are the odds?
What are the odds we still have a filibuster in 2020? 20%.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see it back. It's gone.
Yeah, I think it's gone. I think it's 20 or lower. I think it's gone.
I was gonna say 25, but you know, clearly I'm on the high optimistic end. I mean, are we still gonna have government next week is my question.
Ideally, I'd say 90%, but the realist in me says 0%. It's an anti-democratic, legacy that I don't know if it has much influence anymore.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. Round of applause for yourselves primarily.